Well, we thought BYU might still be on the outside looking at the latest AP Top 25 because of the movement in week one of college football. And it turns out, Jason, the Cougars are once again just outside the first team out, which is, frankly, the place I thought they would be exactly. Again, one spot out for a second consecutive week. I guess the big question here is that fair to BYU after the drubbing they put on Portland State and everything else that happened around the Cougars in college football?
I certainly understand it. I think it's what I expected as well. I heard you talking about that on the show. Is it fair? Look, I always want BYU to be given the benefit of the doubt and to be given every opportunity and advantage possible. I thought there was at least a chance that they could move up to, say, number 25, just because, yes, it's an FCS opponent, but the domination was so impressive that I thought maybe that would be enough to move them up to 25. But ultimately, I understand. Most times when you play an FCS team, it really doesn't matter the outcome. You're usually not going to move up. Sometimes you could even win handily, but because somebody behind you had a more impressive win against a more impressive opponent, they still may leapfrog you. Sure. So ultimately, it's probably about where they were going to be anyway, so I really don't have that big of a problem with it.
Yeah, speaking of the leapfrog, we thought that obviously a team like Florida State, after dismantling Alabama, would certainly merit a spot in the top 25, and it gave them a big jump. We also wondered about Utah, because they were one spot behind BYU in terms of receiving votes, but you go on the road, you dominate a name brand like UCLA. Frankly, that resonates more than BYU obliterating Portland State.
And that's more, quite frankly, about the name than it is the actual team, because UCLA is not that good.
Sure. Of note, Arizona State is the highest-ranked Big 12 team. They dropped one spot. Iowa State gets a deserved bump, up 6 spots, because remember, they started 22nd, beat Kansas State in week 0. There's no ranking shift after week 0, and then handled South Dakota. So don't be confused. Like, why did Iowa State jump 6 spots for beating South Dakota? No, that's a combo deal for beating Kansas State in Ireland and handling South Dakota. They're up to number 16. And then Texas Tech, number 24, down 1 spot. Number 25, Utah. BYU, the first team out. So the Big 12 is 1 spot away from having 5 teams in the top 25. I do think it's fair based on what these teams have been able to show, and it is a very limited and small sample size, relatively speaking. And I know there are several of you out there that are saying, why do we even rank these teams this early in the season? We don't actually know what most of these teams are, and it's going to take at least a month, between 4 and 6 games, to actually figure it out. But there's this thing called context and hype and creating headlines so that people can be excited.
It's staying
Jason.
in the news. Yes, it's keeping the excitement level up. They want to have college football content available for fans 24/7.
So just think about this. Would you, okay, and I'm going to make a comparison here. We're going to use food this time, Jason, because we were just talking about barbecue, okay?
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So let's say you have a prime steak. It's cooked for you, but it's at home. You don't know where it came from, but someone says, hey, I've got some good steak. You want to try it? It's like, oh, yeah, like I'll eat the steak. Let's give it a go. Oh, this is actually really good. Okay, very good. Okay, not saying that's bad, but if you go to a premier restaurant that is known for steak and it has all of the packaging and all the sides around it that go along with that, how much more excited are you going to be to eat that steak knowing you're going to a place that specializes in that and there's all of the pretty wrappings and surroundings that follow it?
Yeah, you're going to be way more excited about that because your expectations have risen.
This is kind of like the early ranking system to me. You could have a steak from your favorite steakhouse, but you cook it at home, you feel a little bit differently about it. You just do.
Yeah.
You just do. So when you put those little rankings numbers and expectations and prognostications in front of it, and you go to a place like ESPN, which is dubbing it, oh, this is a huge game, or Fox Sports, and they're giving it the trimmings and the sides and the context, Jason, it just makes you a little bit more excited. The anticipation is there, right?
Yeah, look, I think we're all on the same page that it really doesn't matter a whole lot because most of these types of rankings are going to change. I don't want to say significantly, but there will be swings as this season goes along, and this top 25 poll is going to look pretty different, say, by week 6, certainly by week 7, 8, 9.
Like, there will be volatility
Yes.
by nature of how many games are played, and teams are going to lose, but I don't understand why there is such a pushback, and it's growing now, for these early rankings, because it creates excitement and it creates expectation. And yes, I know that if you watched Alabama and Florida State and they didn't have rankings next to them, you'd still like it, but it wouldn't feel quite the same if you saw a number 8 next to Alabama or a number 16 next to Florida State. It's like, ooh, I'm going to watch that game, or I'm going to go to that restaurant because it's packaged the right way. It looks good, and I feel like I can be excited about that. So I get it. Logically, rankings, while they're not so solid early and there is going to be a lot of movement, they still create excitement, Jason, and that's what we're here for.
That's what we're here for. So, all right, being one spot out, do you believe that with a win over Stanford, that will be enough to jump BYU into the top 25?
So immediately I want to say yes, because while Stanford is down, it's a name brand still. It's a recognizable name. And I look at a team like Utah that went and beat what I think is not a great UCLA team. I think Utah is a very good team. But there is this idea of, well, you handled UCLA. Like, yeah, that's an impressive win. There should be, and whether it's deserved or not, because Stanford is Stanford and the name is there, it will feel very different than BYU beating Portland State.
Oh, 100%.
If BYU handles them. So I'm inclined to say, yes, BYU will jump into the top 25 if you beat Stanford. Now, how does it happen? Does it close? Is the game super competitive? Does it get weird? That all factors in. But if BYU just holds serve and let's say they win by the 18 points they're favored by, yeah, I think that they're just going to sneak in. There's not a ton of like, at least in terms of matchups, there's not going to be a ton of teams above BYU without some upsets that are going to fall out. I don't envision BYU being leapfrogged as significantly as they were last week. But, Jason, we could be right back here next week in the same spot saying, well, BYU's 1 or 2 spots out because there just wasn't enough upsets above them in the top 20.
Yeah, I do think, I agree with you. I think a win does put them in. I'm also assuming that a win is probably going to be by a couple of touchdowns. I think that's obviously, we know what the line is. So I think it is going to matter. Now, if it is close, you know, maybe within a touchdown, maybe they don't. But I want to go back to something that you had mentioned with Iowa State. Like, well, why are they jumping up after you know, getting just the one? Well, it's because you have the combo of the two from week 0 and beating in Kansas State. And I'm not saying that beating an FCS team like Portland State is the same as what Iowa State did to Kansas State. But if you can come out and put together an offensive performance and a defensive performance similar to what you have, and I'm not saying score 69 points, but if you can come out and look dominant that way, you combine that with what you did against Portland State, where you did score 69 points. You put up a shutout defensively. You allowed a total of 51 total yards of offense throughout 4 quarters. If you can do anything similar to that, I think then it does give you a little bit of an added boost, because I think they would take both into account. It's like, okay, well, what we saw against Portland State, now added with what we saw against Stanford, that definitely jumps them into the top 25.
Okay, you want some teams to root for, and these are probably the most realistic options of things that could happen to help BYU. I will give you 3 names, okay? Notably, you should root for Kentucky to beat number 20 Ole Miss. That game is in Kentucky, so early SEC game, afternoon on ABC. You want Kentucky to beat number 20 Ole Miss. Number 24 Texas Tech is hosting Kent State. Now, I don't think much is going to happen there, but if Kent State can make it weird and it's a close game, we'll see. Then there's Baylor and SMU, Jason. SMU number 17 right now. Baylor's on the road in Dallas. Can Baylor bounce back after losing to a good Auburn team on their home field and beat SMU? That is something that you also keep an eye on. And I'll give you a bonus one as well. Iowa State. I know the Cyclones are in the Big 12, and some of you will feel inclined to, no, root for the Big 12. Like, we want more prestige. We want those teams to win. If Iowa beats number 16 Iowa State, then maybe there is some movement there, and BYU might benefit from that. I don't know if there's enough. Like, Iowa State could probably lose and still stay in the top 25, depending on how close that game is. But those are 3 or 4 names that you should root for that could help BYU if there are some upsets. But, yeah, frankly, again, if everything pretty much holds serve, Jason, I don't know. BYU probably is, again, 1 to 2 spots out.
Yeah.
And what of the Utah versus Cal Poly scenario and BYU and Stanford? It's almost like
they're just flipping weeks.
The inverse of the setup, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So can BYU be so dominant against Stanford, and then Utah takes on an FCS opponent, the voters are like, okay, well, let's flip-flop those two.
Well, I mean, using the rationale that clearly the top 25 voters, the AP voters did, I would not expect Utah to jump up with a dominating performance over Cal Poly.
Sure.
So if that's the case, then they should stay where they are, or, you know, I can't imagine they'll drop out, but I would imagine that they probably stay put with a win.
It is fascinating, and I know it's
because
all
if they get a bump up, it would be like, well, wait a minute, what's the difference?
Does BYU somehow benefit from not being ranked? Like, is there this edge? It's like, hey, they still don't know.
All right.